Hi, my name is Mike Langlois, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about social media and video games and the connection between the two. A lot of times we're talking about social media today with our patients. We're talking about Facebook, we're talking about texting and Twitter, and those things come up both in the treatment in terms of patients' stories, or the patients may actually bring in texts or their laptop and show us a Facebook page. And social media is something that's becoming much more well known in all sectors of our society, including mental health professionals. And social media has been growing increasingly important in terms of how people do business, in terms of their health, and in terms of all sorts of activities. So, one of the things that I was thinking about this past week was the fact that we tend to look at video games and online gaming often as distinct from social media, and I actually wanted to encourage us to rethink that today. I think social media has made a lot more of a groundswell in mainstream culture and in all forms of business because it's been easier more quickly to see its applicability to different things. Twitter, we can understand a little bit more easily how tweeting an article might be useful, or Facebook, we can understand how keeping in touch with people or establishing business groups with another social media software program might be useful. In fact, the social network company that I'm actually a co-founder of, we've been doing this for about 10 years now, and it's been very frequently we talk about how to integrate a business model and how to integrate social media into it, but we didn't talk about video games. And as anybody that's listened to any of these video blogs knows, I love talking about video games. So I started to think, why is it that we're not talking about it? And what I noticed was that we take video games less seriously. We tend to think of them as frivolous, and we are in a rather puritanical society. That's our heritage, and we don't think of video games as being something that you use for work. So, although there's some groundbreaking work by some IBM and Seriosity and some other folks that are talking about this, and Jane McGonigal and lots of other folks are talking about gamification in terms of business, we don't necessarily talk about video games as social media. So, I think one of the main points I want to make today is that when you're talking with your patients about video games and gaming, you really need to understand that video games are often, if not most of the time, social. And video games are social media. For example, if someone is playing Scrabble on Facebook, they're often playing back and forth with another player. If somebody is doing Farmville, they're usually doing it with another player. People are using massively multiplayer online technology to play Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, the new one's Rift, and these are all social activities. People will be talking via headsets on these games, will be cooperating with each other, actually maybe catching up on their day or speaking with loved ones from overseas, even sometimes talking about homework and studies and what they need to do and how to think about a problem. So what we see from the outside is somebody with a headset on, perhaps maybe talking a little but playing a game. And what we don't know is that there's perhaps some real social media and some power going on within what's happening for the patient. I want to drive this point home, especially for parents, because I think parents often inadvertently ground their kid or disconnect their kid socially from their peers via taking away video games. And sometimes that's actually a major way that children communicate with each other or adolescents communicate with each other. They may be talking about, as I said, schoolwork, or they may be just relaxing like you and I do after a day of work. But when we say you can't use the games anymore, what we're often saying inadvertently is you can't talk to your friends anymore. And so, if parents want to talk about grounding and that is a natural consequence for something, I certainly think that makes sense. Just make sure you know what you're doing and make sure that when you're taking away a video game, you're not just taking away a toy, that in fact you're taking away a kid's connection with some of his other peers, and whether or not that is what you're intending to do, that could be what's happening. Um, this is something that may need to be emphasized more to folks that are in my generation or older, and that is because we came of age when video games were things like Pong or Space Invaders or Pac-Man, and the only real social aspect of it was more in the form of parallel play, that one person took a turn and the other person took a turn. Maybe we competed about scores, but there was no social interaction. And in fact, it usually seemed like the kids were interacting with the TV because a lot of these panels were hooked up to a television set. So somewhere along the line we learned that television and video games are often synonymous, that video games are not social at all, and that they're basically a high functioning toy. So I really want to encourage you to really rethink that and be on the lookout in your practice or with your own kids or your loved ones who play video games for the signs of this as social media. I think you're going to notice it more when you keep an eye out for it. And I think it's really important to notice that video games are social media and they provide a very important social function. So that's what I wanted to talk with you about today. If you have any questions about whether video games can be applied in certain ways in terms of social media, feel free to either check out my blog or send a comment to me, or email me. And I'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.